Yeah, exactly. So now it's going to be recorded. Okay, so let's start with the conversation, and thanks again for joining. So let's start with the first part of the chat, which is, well, Irania can just start from this point.
Yes, well, I think we decided to do this webinar again because, as Chu mentioned, Armando mentioned, it's been 1 year since the lockdown. So I would say like the first, let's say, the first thought that I want you to share is, if tomorrow you have to leave China, what's gonna happen with your money? Are you really you are ready to leave China? And then what is gonna happen in case you have to leave, let's say, tomorrow?
So yeah, sorry about that. I'm also struggling with the sharing screen. So yeah, so here you go.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, here's the question. So you can give more explanation to everyone. So yeah, basically, imagine that someone tells you tomorrow, hopefully not the immigration department, but someone tells you you have to leave China tomorrow. So now you're gonna see a poll popping up in your screen. So basically the question is, what financial concerns would you have if you had to leave China, well, today or tomorrow?
Yeah, well, some of the option is like, yep, I have too much renminbi in China, so I don't know what to do with that big amount of money. Then, like, I never invest in China, or I never investing meanwhile I was in China. Then I don't have any retirement savings while I was in China. I didn't save or invest in China at all. And well, the last one, no concerns. I did have a good job. So you can click in the option. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, having too much RMB in China can be a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, because the good thing is that you did a good job, that you save up quite some money. So great. Great on that aspect. But the big problem, as probably many of you can imagine, is that also having too much RMB, how do you take it out if you have to leave China today or tomorrow? So that's the issue. The good thing that you save money, but the bad thing is that now it's too much money, and we all know as foreigners, it's not as easy to just simply say, okay, I'm gonna transfer this big amount, hopefully it's a big amount, out of this country to somewhere else. So I'm gonna end the poll, and I'm gonna share the results so people can see what is the biggest financial concern for, at least for the audience. Obviously, everyone has their own concerns, so maybe Irania can show us. Yeah.
According with the poll, I think we have rich audience, meaning like the winning option is like too much renminbi in China, which is good, but as Armando said, is hard in the moment. If you have to leave tomorrow, probably you can take your money with you. So I think as a winner option, it's one of the things you need to start thinking, because it's not that easy to take out that big amount of money out of China. Then after, never start investing while in China. I think that's a really common practice because nobody really teaches how to save or how to invest. It's something that in the adulthood we need to start to think about it, but nobody really teaches since we were kids, or like it's not part of our education. But I think that seeing that is the two most popular, I think, we can see that are common problems that we all have here in China.
Yeah, definitely. And then it was followed by some others, but yes, the top, it was almost 50% of the audience is too much RMB. So yes, it's good that we have a rich in RMB audience in this case, but it's important to, because of that, also start planning. What if you're forced out of China earlier than you were expecting to? So that's okay. There are ways to work on that and how to fix it. So let's talk about, give a bit of background of what has happened over the last 12 months. I don't know, Irania, you want to share about your experience? I mean, many things have changed since the last webinar. So yeah, you can
Yeah,
get started
sure.
with your
I
views.
would say, like, recently when I'm start talking with the clients, we put it two important dates. One is of course the 2020. Like some of us, we were stuck here in China 2020 until this year 23. So I think it was a really tough for everyone because it was a lot of uncertain moments, situation, and everything. This is the first day, I would say, 2020. And then last year, when exactly we did this webinar, when we were all locked down here in Shanghai, and we have a big audience like today, where we were, I think all of us, we were connected because we were so desperate at home, trying to figure it out what to do. Should I stay? Should I go? Should I leave China? So what I think that was the main concern. And just following that together with the past 12 months, the ones that we decide to stay here, I think, yes, we are the survivors, but also I think it's the right moment to just take this reborn of China.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think some of the financial implications as individuals, because obviously there are other implications of these last 12 months, but based on what I've seen from having conversations with clients, with just foreigners living in Shanghai or China in general, not just Shanghai, is that because of the lockdowns and because of everything, most people, I mean, the positive things that, I mean, the negative we all know, but the positive things that people had chance to save more money during this period because you couldn't go anywhere. So that helped to bump your savings. And I guess that's why one of the reasons many people say we have a lot of RMB right now sitting in the bank. So that's a good thing. What's the danger is that now that things are opening up, it's probably going to be very easy to think, oh, finally I can start traveling, going to Thailand, Philippines, my home country, whatever. And we obviously deserve those trips because it's been quite a long time, but we also need to be very smart about it. So this financial benefit that we have over the last 12 months don't just go away in a couple of trips now that we're just trying to go back to resume everything up. Yeah. So I think that was something interesting to see. And another thing that I think is important that we shared last session a year ago is that it's important to have savings in China. And I know, or we know that a concern is having too much savings, but if you're still planning to live here, it's fine to have some savings in China. And my suggestion is about 3 to 6 months of how much you spend every month. So let's just to give a very, very easy example. Let's say your housing, food, going out, and everything costs you 10,000 RMB, just to give a simple number. So with this in mind, my suggestion is to have between 30 to no more than 60,000 RMB in a Chinese bank account. And that's it, nothing else. That's not going to give you any returns because it's just money in the bank. And it's okay that it's just sitting there. But that will be the maximum that I suggest to keep in RMB in China. Because if you have to leave, then still is some money, but it probably won't change your whole financial structure. And maybe it's not for everyone, but if also you may have some big expenses that you need to pay inside of China, let's say a medical insurance that you need to pay once a year, or school fees, or something big, and that you know that you will pay here, then that can also be obviously stay here. And because those maybe are paid either once or twice a year, for that you can do something so at least it doesn't lose value with inflation, and that you can access any Chinese bank by yourself. You don't need an advisor or anyone, and a foreigner can do it. So it's basically a time deposit, and it's there, so you can see how it's written, what's the pinyin. I'm not gonna try to pronounce it, so because I'm not great, or I can, yeah, better not. I'm not gonna even give it a try, but there it is. So that's something that you could actually do in China. And that's my only suggestion of investment inside of China for the short-term period. Have you had any experience on doing time deposits in China, in Irania? Just out of
Yeah,
curiosity.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I think at the end, I'm totally agree with you because they say also if you are financially fit, you need to cover, yeah, between 3 to 6 months without any concern or any other urgency, then they say like you are actually having a very like stable situation. But sometimes it's hard. It's hard because you want to maybe, as you mentioned now, if you want to go have a trip and then suddenly all those 3 months that is the minimum that you are saying, it's like suddenly become 2 months or even less. It's a little shaky just to be there without being having those savings in China. Yeah, I mean, one of my advice as well as you is like try to always send your money out of China. Just keep the one that you needed here. Why? Because you can invest overseas, and especially, for example, very good plans if you want to invest in pounds or euros or dollars.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's something I wanted to reshare again from the last session. And so yeah, right now, just for reference, most Chinese banks, if you lock your money for like 6 to 12 months, the average annual return will be 3 to 4%, which is something. It's not great, but it's just to cover inflation, so better than zero. And yeah, that's a tip that I think we can all try to benefit if we actually need some big expenses in here. So the next topic is financial mistakes to avoid while living in China. So yeah, maybe Dania can start giving her opinion or based on friends' experience and other things that you've noticed of what happens when people don't really benefit from the time of working in the Middle Kingdom.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes is like to overthink, like, oh, maybe I don't have enough money to invest, maybe I don't have enough money to save. I would say it's always a good moment to start. Why? Because you can start with really small amount according what you are earning, and then I think this is the first mistake. And the second one is like when we are younger, it's like, oh yeah, because I'm young, I don't need to think about it. Right now I'm young and free, it's okay. But I think it's always is a good moment to start save money, and then just to you don't have to wait until you have certain amount to really, or to have certain earnings to really start saving. So this is the two mistakes I heard around my friends, like, oh, maybe I'm too young, I don't have to start saving right now or think about that. And the second one is like, oh, until I earn that account, that amount, then I start saving.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And probably that's something that even if that applies for people everywhere in the world, not just people living in China. So I guess that's a very common thing to do, to delay that. And something that is very China specific, I mean, expats living in China specific, is what we already discussed in the poll, like not starting take your money out of China in a smart way, because not everyone, but majority of foreigners won't spend the rest of their life here. And if you do, great. But yeah, probably you can still even benefit to have something outside just in case for diversification and for different reasons. So one of the main reasons as well that of why I think this happens is, well, one thing is the not thinking too much about these topics, but also not having enough knowledge of what expats can access while living here. So that's also a real thing. Not everyone knows of what are the options for expats while living in China. So very briefly, I'm gonna tell you what are the most common things that any single foreigner while living here can access, and just roughly give you an idea of everything that I put here in this slide. Ideally, my suggestion, as you can see here on the right part, is that you can either access that on your home country or in a third location. So retirement accounts, we know that by being in China, in most cases, we don't really benefit of having a retirement or a pension scheme, especially those in Shanghai. It's not mandatory. In some other cities, yeah, they have to provide something, but most likely you won't accumulate enough years to be able to access. And yeah, once you leave China, you can get it out, but for sure it won't be a huge amount. But you can get something overseas. And probably also back home, it will be hard because you are not living there and working there. So you're still also not accumulating enough weeks or years, or depends however your country qualified you to be eligible for a pension at some point. So also something that you can get while living in China, but it's an overseas plan, is something for education for those who have kids, and also investing. We call wealth accounts because ideally you also want to start building your portfolios. And the last part, what will or estate planning, is more for depending on where your assets are. But the last thing that also many people don't know is that as a foreigner, you can buy properties as investments in some other countries, even if you're not resident, and access a mortgage. Because the idea of investing through a mortgage is that you are not using 100% of your capital to buy a property. You're maybe using 20 to 30% as a down payment. You get a mortgage from either a bank or a lender, and ideally you're going to rent out that property so the rent can cover the mortgage, and it's just an investment. You forget about that. So there are some jurisdictions or countries where as a foreigner you can buy and you don't need to live there to get also a mortgage, and that's also a good thing that people can access but not always have the knowledge about it. So yeah, these are the main options that people can explore, and just by knowing that this is available, maybe that will lead to actually taking action and avoid the mistakes that Irania was talking about before. And with this, we can probably move to the next one, talking about the repatriation of RM or of your RMB. So maybe Irania can just share a bit of her experience of friends, because obviously you're still in China, so you still don't struggle with that. But I'm sure over the last 12 months, you've seen many of your friends living in China. Have you heard about them struggling with, oh, I have a lot of money stuck, or what's your experience with this topic based on friends or even yourself?
Yes, Armando. I think we have all different cases around my friends, and then I think it's the same for the audience. Like some of them, they don't have any other source of savings. All the savings were here in China. So this is one of the cases, and it was really tough. Some of the others, according with your employer, sometimes it's really hard to put together all the papers and then just go to the bank and take out or send your money to your personal account in your home country. So there was another situation. And then also because, as you mentioned, with the lack of knowledge that what we can do with our money. So sometimes it's like they really have a headache to do all the process in a short time. Because we start this webinar saying what happened if you have to leave China tomorrow. So that is what happened with those people 12 months ago. Like they just decide to live in China either for the lockdown or either work or any other circumstances. But because of that, they were suddenly faced the situation like, okay, I have maybe only 10 days to take out all my savings. So there were cases, as I mentioned, where they don't even know what papers you need on the bank. They don't even know, or they don't have even an account that can receive that money in their home country. So it was different cases, different scenarios. At the end, some of them, they leave the bank account open. That also this can take at the long term some consequences with the banks. So I think once more, I think this situation we were facing it because we don't have the knowledge.
Yeah, I totally agree. And obviously there are many factors to consider. And I actually forgot to include that in the previous slide, but something that also foreigners can access is an international bank account. Because as you said, there are some people, like even myself, when I first arrived to Shanghai or China in general, I didn't have a bank account in Mexico. So if I wanted at some point to take the money out of China, I wouldn't know where to send it because I wouldn't have somewhere to receive it in my own name. Obviously, I can always say, oh, maybe I'll send it to my family, to my brother, whatever, but it's not under my name. And if I wanted something like this, back then, I didn't know that I could open an international bank account in dollars, euros, pounds, something that is just a bank account. And it's a good way to kind of like have platform where I can receive my cash and ideally eventually start also investing it, but at least the first step is just get it out. So that's something that pretty much every foreigner can access an international bank account while living in China, and depends on your situation, it could add some value to have a global place to start keeping your money. And yes, I've also heard a lot of cases where either, especially those who left during the lockdown, even if they had the paperwork ready, everything was locked, so the banks were closed. So yeah,
Yes.
they wouldn't be able to do it. So one suggestion that I have for this, even though that we don't expect and hope that this lockdown will happen again, I think it's very unlikely. But anyway, let's not jinx it. Doesn't matter. My suggestion is there are some banks that allow you to bring your paperwork. For those who don't know what's the process, if you want to do it through a bank account, you first need to bring your documents that prove that you have paid taxes on the amount that you want to take out of China. So probably many have heard, oh, there's a limit of 60,000. That's just for Chinese people, not for foreigners. 50,000, sorry, $50,000 a year. For foreigners, there's no limit. The only limit is how much taxes you pay. So if you make $1 million a year, great for you. But as long as you have tax proof of that you pay taxes on this million, they will let you take it out. So I would suggest there are some banks that allow you to bring all these paperwork and say, okay, I have my quota that I want to take out at some point, $50,000 of RMB, but I don't have to do it today because maybe you don't want to sell it right now or whatever reason, but at least you already did the paperwork and they'll keep this paperwork so you can later do it over the next 12 months if you want, and you don't need to come back to the bank. You just do it from the app of the bank. So if anyone is interested, I can later send you also the information of which banks can do that. But yeah, that's a very good tip, because if something happens and you actually have to leave China, but you already did this, so even if you're no longer in China because you already did the paperwork, at least you can still convert those RMB into whatever currency you want to do and later transfer it out just through the app. So that saves a lot of problem. But if you already left, it will be trickier. You will need to find a way to come back to China. Finally, it's open again. But yeah, that is a very good tip that back then I didn't know it, actually, that there are some banks that allow you to do this online. You still have to go once to the bank to do it, but once you do it, it saves a lot of problems. But yeah, we can also talk about some other ways of taking the money out. So we already mentioned the bank transfers, which is, I mean, ideally, this is the more straightforward. It does require some paperwork, but that's the more straightforward. Then there's also swapping. That means asking friends that maybe need RMB and they can give you the currency that you want in whatever country you're looking for. Obviously, this is technically not legal, but many still do it as long as it's not big amounts. And yeah, for small amounts, maybe once or twice, it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, at some point, you cannot expect to take out 100K RMB out of China. I mean, you can still do it, but that's not the best way, because one day you may have issues with that account where you receive the money. Maybe in China, not as much, but anyway. And another way to do it is also through investments. So there's also ways to invest directly your RMB into international investment accounts in other currencies. So that's one way that many of my clients also like to do, automatically just get their RMB transferring to something for either their retirement or their kids' education or whatever, but using their RMB. So that's another way of getting some money out of China. So yeah, and I think those are the three main ways that I know. I don't know if you can think of any other alternatives of, I mean, cash in the plane, but
in the plane,
I mean, you
in the
can do it.
suitcase.
I think there's a limit. Yes.
Yeah, there is a limit. I think, of course, like
Yes.
swaps or just taking the money in cash, I think, of course, it could be an option, but it's not. It's not the proper way. And I think right now, together with the technology and the Chinese banks that they are let's say, quite ready for these technologies, everything could be easier, I would say. And then also it's a matter of time. I mean, right now, if you are just listening to us, maybe it's just a signal that you really need to start to thinking about invest, just to take out your money, and then just probably you can invest something in your home country, like for example, real estate is quite good on that. And then there are different assets that you can invest, but you need to have this, let's say, base, these funds to whenever you decide to make a big move or just acquire something or just enlarge your assets, then you need to have this investment, and then of course have a more profitable value of your money.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is basically it's kind of like a updated recap of the checklist that we did 12 months ago. So there are a couple of new things, but some others are kind of similar to what we discussed with new information. And for those who are either new to China, well, now you know how to start planning, because China is amazing and you should really enjoy it. But also you should benefit from this time of working here and try to do something that will improve your financial future as well, while living in this great place. So maybe now we can let the audience, if there's any questions, you can start either sending there on the chat, if there's anything in particular that you want to learn about. In the meantime, I'm also going to share a new poll that for those who want to learn more about any specific questions, let us know. So here are some of the options. I mean, there's something else. So here, if you want to learn more about overseas bank accounts or retirement options for expats, or more about investment options for expats, or even join so I work for the DB group, so we do also different webinar series, and we have a WeChat group. So if you also want to be included into that WeChat group, let us know and we can add you to that. But yeah, in the meantime, let's see if there's any questions coming from the audience, and we can talk about that as well to go more deep into those topics. So let's,
Okay.
yeah, just leave it here and hit.
Yeah, I got one question. It says like,
Yeah.
can I just start investing, and then if we can help them to send the money in case they want to start invest, let's say in some real estate, in some home back in their home country, like we can help them to start saving from China and then send the money abroad.
So for example, just let's say you start from zero and you want at some point buy a property either in your home country or somewhere else. There's two scenarios. If you already have the money, then the only thing you need to do is just get the money out, and that's it. So for that, you don't really need any company's help. Like, I'm a financial planner, but for that, you don't really need me. You just go to the bank and get your money out if you already know where you want to buy it, and that's it. But if you say, I do want to have at some point real estate either in my home country or another place, then obviously step one is to start saving up for that down payment. Depends on how much you need, then I can guide you on how to get there in a fast way or more profitable way. And once we reach that point, usually the way to save for those goals probably is going to be a medium term goal, maybe 5 years, 3 years, depends on how expensive is the property you want to buy, how much savings you can do. But yeah, once you reach that stage, then since the money will be already out of China, it will be very easy to transfer to your home country or wherever you are decided to do that investment. So yeah, just to give an example about myself, I just with my wife and I, we just bought an apartment in Manchester. So the first step was get the money until we get enough for the down payment. And once we reach it and it's already out of China, then we just simply say, okay, now let's do the rest of doing the down payment. And because it's an investment, we don't plan to live there and we can get a mortgage and just, okay, get the specific amount and find what we think fits our needs.
I got another question. Like, what will be, let's say, the ideal or the possible amount that I need to invest per month in order to get, let's say, a plan, or just like as you mentioned right now that you bought a house, what will be that period? Like, how much will be the contribution that I have monthly or per year to really have this plan, let's say? What do you suggest being here in China?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So depends what's the target. It's not the same saving for your retirement versus saving for a house. So I'm gonna give the example of retirement planning. So normally we should be allocating around uh, between 15 to 25% of our income towards retirement. That doesn't mean everything has to go to a one type of account. Maybe you're already investing into a retirement account back in your home country or with your company. So try to think, if you're already doing something like that, how much you already are doing in percentage. So if you're already doing 5% for retirement, then probably you still need to add up another at least 10% from your salary, and that would be the number that you would think, okay, maybe at least I should be allocating this extra for something retirement like. So let's say you make 30,000 RMB per month, so at least 3,000 RMB per month towards retirement. That's a good way to get started. And there are available options with those ranges. Even a bit lower, there are also available options, but more than thinking a specific UN number, think more of percentages. Because if we just fix our mindset into, let's say, 3,000 RMB per month, what if in the future your income increases like double the salary, but you still stick to 3,000? Then it doesn't represent the percentage that it used to be. So try to think more of percentages. And yeah, as long as you're doing at least 15% towards retirement, you're doing okay. Obviously, if you can push it up, it's always better. But yeah, 15% is a good start towards retirement. And then for other goals, because probably you may be able to save extra, I would say then take the whatever remaining above that percentage for the other goals that you may have, like a property or your kids or starting a business. So yeah, again, it's all about percentages, not specific numbers of money, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, at least if you get this 10% on mine, then you kind of see your salary and then you just try to start thinking that the 10% can be for your future.
Yeah, exactly. And one very important thing is that if we were, like, let's say, working back in our home country, we will be forced to save that percentage anyway. But now that we're in China, we forgot about this. Like back in your home country, you didn't even have an option. They will just directly take it out of your salary and it will be gone. No options. Probably it may not be 15%, but at least it will be more. But here in China, it's zero. Unless you're doing something else. But in China, just by default, by the Chinese income will be zero. And we just forget about that. So most of the times I see that we should at least go back to whatever we were forced to back in our home country if we were working there. So try to think of that like, okay, since now China is not forcing me, I need to find a way to force myself to have this percentage for that I no longer have.
Good. And I think it's also important that you have in mind what you are saving for, right? Like, for example, as you say, if it's just for your retirement, to buy real estate, then if you have it on mind, it will be easy for you to calculate, maybe answer to the question of the audience, how much percentage you need to put in order to achieve your goal. Because I think as all the goals, they can be measurable, and then you can just put a period of time and saying when, how you want it, and according with your earnings, how much percentage you can actually put aside to start saving and achieve your goal.
Yeah, and something I really recommend is try to have an account for each goal, so it's easier to keep track and easier to like not mix things. So one account should be just for this financial freedom or retirement goal. Then you can have a different account that is just for a down payment on a property. And this way it will be easier to also manage your assets and how much you're putting towards that. And also if you're investing it, the target of financial freedom or retirement tends to be a very long-term goal. So you can have a portfolio that targets to have very good returns in the long term, but it may fluctuate in the middle. But if you have maybe a goal that is in 2-3 years, you should have a very different portfolio because that's a shorter time. So by having different accounts for each goal, it also makes it easier to not just keep track of how much you're putting, but also manage how you're investing for each target.
Good.
Yeah, that's another
Good tip.
recommendation.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
Cool. So I think there's no more questions, but I'm very happy for everyone who joined, and I hope it was useful. We're gonna be sharing the recording, so you can also send to your friends, and you can also reach out if you have any more specific or individual questions that were not covered. And again, thanks for joining. Thanks, Irania, for spending some time this evening to have this 2.0 money checklist for expats in China. Anything else you want to share to the audience?
Thank you, Armando. No, just start saving and then talk to you. I think you can actually put them in a financially fit.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.